there. All right, we're going to be going out to Clearwater, Florida now, where overnight there was an incident where police were ambushed and a suspect was killed. Let's listen in.
Come out and meet them. The subject, Mr. Falana, ended up firing multiple times at the officers from while he stood inside the residence. There are multiple rounds that went in the direction of the officers. Some of them you can see in the vehicle that belongs to Mr. Falana that was right behind where the officers were standing. The officers were not able to return fire. They basically immediately went for cover. One officer had narrowly missed being struck by multiple bullets. He has a fragment of a round that was embedded in his shoe. He has two holes in his pants that look like two of the rounds went through his pants, narrowly missing his leg. From there, Mr. Falana stayed within the residence. In this location, if it's a little awkward, that has an easterly access for kind of a residential area, but there's also a business strip store that's on the western side of the building. So Mr. Falana had retreated back inside of the business. Officers were on the other side, on the western side of the business, kind of trying to provide containment. When Mr. Falana started shooting at them from through the window and then exited through this broken window into the roadway, where officers returned fire multiple times to neutralize the threat. The firearm that you see to my far right here is the firearm that Mr. Falana used to try to kill the officers. It is the firearm that was within close proximity of his body as he continued to move to the point where officers neutralized the threat. The officers involved in this incident were Officer Stephen Buis, a one-year veteran with the Clearwater Police Department and a United States Army veteran who did several tours overseas. Officer Zachary Center, who is a one-year veteran with the Clearwater Police Department but an experienced officer from outside the agency. Canine Officer Robert Main, who is an officer with about 8 years experience, and Sergeant Michael Spitaleri, the canine sergeant, who has about 12 years experience. All four of those officers were the ones that returned fire that morning. We have several other officers who were the subject of being shot at, so we have a significant amount of people that were involved in this incident. The next stage on our investigation, which will take a lot of time because of the large scope of the scene and the amount of information, the video that we're collecting, will take a lot of time to continue on with this investigation. There is a separate and independent investigation being done by the State Attorney's Office into the death investigation of Falana. There is a investigation being conducted by my Criminal Investigations Division. They'll do a comprehensive criminal investigation as well. And then a complete administrative investigation that will be separate, independent, and bifurcated from the criminal case, handled by my Office of Professional Standards to review any administrative issues. It would be very difficult to answer too many questions this early in the investigation, but I am willing to try, and so I will go ahead and open up the floor, and Trevor, you were the first one up.
Chief Slaughter, do you see this as the suspect that was this a planned ambush of police where he was using the woman as a shield to try to lure police in to shoot and kill her?
That is certainly a potential working theory that we were looking at. We definitely need to continue to speak with Ms. Vann. We're asking the public's help in locating Ms. Vann. She fled the scene as this shooting was going on, and we have not been yet able to locate her. What the plan was is still to be determined. We'll need to talk to her to figure out those things. Whether or not Ms. Vann was or was not a willing participant in that, I think it is safe to say that the officers were there, want to check the welfare, and I think ambush would be an accurate term when somebody begins firing multiple rounds in a magazine or a handgun that's capable of holding 30 rounds. So we definitely think ambush is an appropriate word to consider at this point.
What kind of gun is that?
I don't have the exact make and model. Obviously, it's kind of an older, kind of a MAC-10 style. You know, it was kind of a popular handgun back in the 80s during the drug wars.
Mm-hmm.
What about the family member that she supposedly reached out to? Has that been verified, and have you guys spoken with her?
Yeah, there are people that we are talking to, and people we're still continuing to try to talk to, but they will be very critical. We're hoping that they have heard from her also, and we want to make sure that she's all right as well. She was in the middle of a lot of gunfire that was going on, and we're obviously we're concerned that she might have been hit through this thing as well, but we haven't heard that yet, so we're believing that that could possibly not be the case.
But the Facebook or the post that she supposedly made, is that credible? That Vann made?
I believe the information we received from the family was credible. At this time, there's no reason not to believe it was credible, and I think it's appropriate to look at Vann as a potential domestic violence victim that was wrapped up in a circumstance that maybe was beyond her control.
Have you had any contact with these two before?
I am not familiar with Mrs. Vann. We have not had any contact with Mrs. Vann, but Mr. Falana has got a lengthy criminal history for drugs. He's been in multiple kinds of drugs, marijuana, heroin. He's well known for being a drug dealer.
I would imagine, I mean, this ending in the death of a person is not a happy situation for anyone, but I could imagine that you've got to be grateful that this could have been considerably worse considering what was going to be happening in this ambush.
I think whenever you have that kind of number of rounds that were fired, I think we're grateful that our officers were not hurt. We're grateful at this time that we don't believe any other citizens were hurt. I mentioned the rounds going through the officer's clothing, narrowly missing his leg. So he had 3 rounds that were within taking his leg out. I think that just puts an exclamation mark on how close this was to being, much worse than it is.
There was an individual at the scene that, according to her, the suspect was on the ground at some point when police fired shots when the suspect was already on the ground. Does this sound correct? And if so, was it the gun is still in proximity with him being on the ground?
Yeah, and I think that all of the things you're asked about are things that require a whole bunch of vetting. So it is definitely early in the case, and I want to make sure that I accent that these are all preliminary information we have. But the subject, we have multiple witnesses that described something similar to what you're talking about. They described him still moving while he was on the ground, but potentially moving towards a handgun. This gun this picture was taken. And the yellow tarp that was covering Mr. Falana's body is just barely outside of frame. So that's how close this firearm is to our suspect.
What kind of power does that firearm have? It looks like it's got attachments to it.
The scene, as you saw probably, is pretty large and expansive, so a lot of these items that we have pictures of, we haven't collected and analyzed and done all the late processing, all those things that come with it. But I believe it to be kind of a small handgun round, a 9mm 40 caliber, 45 caliber handgun. So it's a potentially lethal round, the capacity is obviously scary in itself too.
Any sense of how many rounds were exchanged in this? Was this just a shootout?
I think it's fair to describe it as a shootout. He came out with obviously some significant firepower, with significant ammunition at his disposal, and that we responded in kind.
Did you say, Chief, how many times the suspect was hit with gunfire?
No, I tell you, he says multiple times at this point.
So I'm sorry, it looked like were they in the business? Was it one of those businesses where all this happened?
So if you're familiar, you probably saw the front side of the store, the western portion of the store. On the back side, there's another entrance, and there's kind of like one of those resident type things that people maybe live in the back. I'm not sure if he was supposed to be living in the back, but it appears that's what was happening. So you can access the unit from both the east side and the west side. Our officers made contact on the east side initially, and then when he ran out the front, he was able to go from the eastern side of the business to the west side and come out, through the glass.
Do you know what her demeanor was like when the officers were trying to talk to her? Because why would she run?
Well, I think that's only a question that Mrs. Vann can answer, why she ran. I mean, if she ran because she was scared because she just saw a big shootout, if she was running because she knew what was going to happen, I don't know. I think the officers, when they got there and tried to engage her in conversation, I think they were very wise. They felt something was just not right. They wanted her to come to them. Instead, she insisted on staying in that threshold of the doorway. I don't, maybe her intent was to stay there to keep him because she knew what he wanted to do and she was hoping he wouldn't do it. I don't know yet. That's only a question that Mrs. Vann is going to answer, and we look forward to talking to Mrs. Vann. She very well may be a victim in this whole scenario. She may be a person suffering from spouse abuse syndrome, or she may be somebody who willingly helped to set the police officers up. That's something that only she can answer at this point.
And the officers entered the apartment, in the end went through the threshold. They had their weapons holstered at that time. Did they go in?
The officers didn't go in that apartment. They were outside of the apartment when he started shooting at them, and then they went for cover, and then he ran through to go out the other side. The officers didn't go in to clear that residence till after this situation had stabilized.
So at this time, Ms. Vann is not a suspect. You don't know if she's a victim, but she's a person of interest that you simply want to talk to who's connected with this case.
At this point, I feel most comfortable classifying her as a witness, and I don't person of interest in the sense that she knows what happened from her perspective, and I think she can connect some of those dots. I don't know what was in the mindset of Mr. Falana. I mean, he's got a lengthy criminal history, and drugs never seemed to keep him off the street before, so there's really no reason to attack our officers the way he did. We don't know why yet.
Is there any current warrants out for him, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of.
And to be clear, those bullet holes are from his gun, right?
Yes. Yeah. That car was parked behind where the officers were initially, and that is from the initial gunfire from Falana.
Have you heard from anybody that lives there that there's a drug problem there? And I heard from one of the business owners that they repeatedly call and it's just there, and they can't get to clean it up or something.
It's an area that's been of concern for us for some time. We've done a lot of work in that area. As I'm sure many people in this room who cover crime on a regular occasion see the same scenario with a person with significant lengthy drug history. I can only reassure you that the officers are aggressively attacking the drug problem and they're making arrests. But these kind of problems, arrests don't solve your problem. That's just a circular door, and obviously it's a profitable profession for a person like him with no morals. All right, everybody good?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
If there are updates later on,